That's why they use the clappers. Right. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for coming. I'll just go straight into it and just go from here. So
Let's do it.
I'm Chris. I'm here with Shani Stevens, an acrobat coach and entrepreneur, currently touring internationally with Gravity and Other Myths as a bass, middle, and a flyer. Very impressive.
Thank you.
While also building Perform Athlete, a strength and conditioning app designed specifically for acrobats. Shani's journey began in a small country town, through gymnastics before training at national level with the Flying Fruit Fly Circus. In 2017, she moved into the professional circus world, performing with Circus Oz, Gravity and Other Myths, and Circa.
Yes.
Years of performing night after night at an elite level shaped not only her athletic ability, but also her understanding of what the body needs to sustain a long-term career in circus. That experience led to the creation of Perform Athlete, which we'll get to in a bit.
Yes.
A training platform built to bring structured strength and conditioning into the circus world, helping artists train with greater purpose, resilience, and longevity. Amazing.
Yes. Perfect.
So let's just go straight in.
Let's do it.
When you first started professionally, what was your introduction to the industry, I suppose?
Into the industry, I mean, it started off, I was doing competitive gymnastics. And then I remember, I think it was just like a birthday gift. I saw, mum bought me a flying trapeze pass. So that was my first introduction to circus. And I was like, man, what the hell is this? And, I had a back injury, which actually stopped my career with gymnastics. Yeah, so that's the reason for that, quick pivot is that I, had big dreams of going to the Olympics and, just like any other young gymnast would. And then had a stress fracture in my lower back.
Oh, wow.
And then, I was like, man, I've just spent all these years getting these skills and, dedicating my whole life to gymnastics. Like, where can I just quickly pivot to make sure what I've been training for doesn't get lost? So when I first started circus in a place called Flipside.
Just quickly, how old were you when that happened?
Oh, I think I was 11 or 12.
Oh, what, when you had the stress fracture?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's actually a pretty common, injury in young gymnasts because you do so much flexion, so much back bending and loading when you're, your spine's still trying to fuse.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I think if I'm remembering right, I remember my sports doctor said 50 to 70% of young female gymnasts have it, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
A stress fracture, yeah. So, getting back to the question, when I started circus, I remember the main thing I felt was I was like, man, it's so unstructured. But, at that time, I was kind of awesome, because I was doing morning training and afternoon training, and I was getting beaten to the bone, and I loved it because I love pushing hard and discipline and everything. But I remember when I went to circus, you could tell that even the trainers, even though the classes were amazing, there wasn't structure, right? Sometimes you do tumbling, sometimes you do aerials, and then, next week when it comes around, you're like, oh, now I'm randomly juggling. So I just remember being like, they don't know what they're doing.
I just love the idea that this is what I love about this industry is that at some point someone would have gone, hi, listen, there's an amazing professional gymnast over there. Juggling? Do you want to have a go at juggling?
Exactly.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. So, that was the main thing is, I remember just being like, I kind of loved it, but at the same time I was a bit weirded out. And to relate a little bit more to strength and conditioning, I remember so vividly, at 12 years old, hopping back in the car after mum, started taking me to circus classes. And I used to be like, oh, mum, how come they don't do strength and conditioning? And I know we're probably going to talk about it later, but I just remember gymnastics, we would spend anywhere from half the class to more than half the class conditioning or strength training, and then we would leave the last percentage to skill work or apparatus work. And I just remember being so confused getting home, just being like, wait, we didn't do anything. And I almost felt unsettled a little bit.
When you say didn't do anything, so nothing from a strength training conditioning, you mean?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or body preparation, anything like that. I would say, at the end, just say we finish off with aerials or tumbling.
Yeah.
I just remembered it would be 5 minutes, quick, cool down, and all right, see you next week or see you next session.
So how long were these sessions? Because you're talking about things oh, okay, cool, we did this, but imagine, I mean, obviously everyone that's watching is hopefully involved in circus in some way, but for you, your training over there, what was it 80, 20, 10, 80, 25? What was the
I mean, gymnastics, I would say it was probably 60, 40 conditioning to skill.
Yeah.
And then circus was 100% just apparatus skill work.
Wow.
Zero, maybe 5%. So 95 to 5%, preparation or skill, strength and conditioning.
So you wouldn't do any warm ups. You wouldn't do any running around. Cause I come from tennis. Have never as you can tell, I haven't been on stage. So for me, like the idea that you just go straight into tennis, but you'd be running around, you'd be doing like warm-ups, you'd be doing, you know, press-ups, you'd be trying to get like the body. Was there literally none of that? It was just straight in?
There was a warm-up in the sense like you would come in and would like, you know, play a game. As, you know, a lot of people that go to youth circus would probably be aware of. You play a game, and that would like, you know, get the blood pumping, it would get you warm. But like, you know, at the end, it's pretty normal for most sports to at least have like some sort of strength and conditioning, you know, it's what your body's missing, or it's how to, you know, excel more at your sport. So I just remember I'd be like, oh wait, we're done. Like I'll get in the car with mum, and I feel like I've got memories of like going home and doing some extra strength and conditioning, you know, because I just was so used to doing it. And I pretty much, it was a really quick split of like going from 2 sessions every single day as like a 10 to 12-year-old at gymnastics to, I'm pretty sure my original youth circus classes were like 2 to 3 sessions a week, 2 to 3 like 2-hour sessions a week. Yeah. So you could imagine it was just like, it felt like the rug got pulled underneath, and I was in love with it, but I just remember being like, oh man.
But that's obviously something you noticed later, was this lack of.
Yes.
But just from you, we'll get onto perform athlete in a bit. Don't worry, we'll get there. But the way in which, like, I think for students in particular will be quite interesting is actually hearing about how you specifically got into the industry. That's always the question. It's like, how do you get in? And like, you know, when I heard that trained as a journalist, you basically turn up at the front door and you're like, let me write some stories for you. That's basically how you do it. So like, for you personally coming into the industry, into circus, like what was your like process and like your way in, I suppose? Yeah,
so when I was at the Flying Fruit Fly Circus, which is where I pretty much dedicate everything to that school, like they were just incredible of getting my skill level up and giving me the experience. And yeah, I moved out of home when I was 13 to move there. So I did a lot of growing up in such a short amount of time, which I think is really important. You know, we'll go into it later, but like important for making me feel like I could get on the road early or tour early. But yeah, I was kind of a little bit of an oddball case of, I was still training at Fruity. So I was 17 and I got called by Circus Oz, which is a circus in Melbourne in Australia. And yeah, they just asked me like, oh, like, hey, you know, would you like a contract? And I remember just being like, wait, what? Like, because I wasn't ready yet.
So did you live in, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Did you live in Melbourne then?
No, so Fruity's, the Flying Fruit Fly Circus is on the border of Victoria and New South Wales. So it's about, I think, a 4-hour drive or train,
That's East Coast, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So when I got called, I remember just being like, oh, what's this email? Like Circus Oz, I had heard of them, but not really. And I remember like going to my trainers, they're like, oh, what does this email mean? And because, you know, I was on my way to like graduating the Fruit Fly Circus. I was working on my end of year, you know, number and everything like that. So
how did they find you then? Was it through like them coming up and seeing you? Was it through your tutors like introducing you? Like
I think a bit of of just to and fro of like maybe they had come to the school, maybe they had just heard my, you know, name of online. Potentially, you know, I was posting a bunch of like my hand balancing videos, and a lot of the time when, you know, you get hired by a company, sometimes it's because they're making a new creation, they're making a new show. In this case, someone was injured, so they wanted like, you know, a hand balancer ASAP.
Someone to start.
Yeah, and at that time there wasn't a lot of hand balancers in Australia. So I was lucky. I got my first job at 17.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I didn't have to necessarily even start applying for circuses then. So I feel really, really grateful for that. But that's not to say that when I was there and it was time to move on from Circus Oz, man, I hustled so hard. Yeah. Like, and I think this is what a lot of people don't realize now is like, you just have to be in companies' faces. And honestly, because I always think about it, and especially because circus is growing and evolving, there is so many people now, right? There's so many artists. So if you're not in an annoying way, but if you're not in like a company's face, just being like, hey, I'm here, this is my availability, this is my skill set, you know, always pretty much pushing, then like you're just going to fall to the bottom of this massive database.
Yeah. Well, this is a fascinating one. So when I was looking into you for the first time, and actually one of the questions I get asked by people is like, you know, how do you find art? You know, how do people find people? How do, you know, how do companies find artists? All the rest of it. And actually, one of the things for me is I'm just like, I'm like Instagram is so like it's like that's quite literally how I found you. I think it was because I was following someone else, and then for whatever reason you popped on, and I'd seen you in Circa in 23 maybe, I can't remember how, but whatever reason, like the algorithm was like, oh, this is cool and this is interesting, and then I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So is that a legitimate thing then that you think that students should focus on, is like their Instagram and like creating like a professional side?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it feels weird to say, but like, yeah, pretty much we always say your Instagram is your CV or your resume. You know, it's really easily accessible. Even, you know, being a little bit more in the back end of like with GOM and that, when you're interested in maybe hiring someone, the first thing you do is you go on their Instagram. And that's not to say if you don't have a, you know, Instagram with heaps of videos, you're not going to get the job, but it really is a way to like demonstrate your skill set.
Yeah.
And it's a way to like, you know, show off like I can do these skills, I've been in this show, these are my other interests, you know, and then a lot of it comes down to, you can also show like personality on there as well and everything like that, you know, isn't just like a CV or a skill reel of just like, here's my name, here's the things I've done. It's just, it's a bit nicer for the brain to kind of digest.
It's great because I think it's something that I need to be better at from my own personal one. It's definitely be better from that side and creating the blurred lines. Just to kind of refocus on that. So you were talking about personality. What does that actually mean in terms of like the personality online? Because I think for some people it's like, oh, I'll just, like me, I'll be like, oh, I'll talk about politics sometimes, and I'll be like, oh no, I probably shouldn't talk about politics. But like, what do you have like certain lines that you do and don't talk about within like that being your shop window?
Yeah, I mean, personality is more, when I think about it on Instagram, is more just like showing up like who you are. And the reason I think it's important is, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it later with the hiring process of GOM and everything, but a lot of the thing that they focus on and what hopefully a lot of companies focus on is personality. And like, you want to be a good person to tour with, right? Because you spend like every single second of the year with these people. So it's like, to me, and like, you know, to GOM, I know that their principles are hiring a good person. You know, it's almost like the person first, the artist second, which I think is an amazing principle, because it's, you have to just spend every, you know, bad travel day, you need to do every hard show, you need to do all the highs, all the lows, all the wins, everything with these people. And I think, you know, if you haven't met someone before and you're wondering whether you should hire them, if you can get a little bit of personality through like these online platforms as well, that's awesome, right? It makes you be like, oh, actually, I think we would gel well with this person, or actually like our, you know, especially because we're Australians, like, or maybe our humor's not going to like click too well with this person.
That's
and
interesting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting one. Well, actually, it's kind of nice. It takes one to tour in life, but actually, before we jump onto that one quickly, like, is there, like, let's say you're sitting down for the first time, because you're amazing with your Instagram and your video and your photos and everything else, but like, if you were, let's say you were on the shy side and you weren't very good, like on a really like practical level, let's say you're doing a skill, for example, like, is there any like real basic kind of film like this, video like this looks good or that looks good? Is there anything that like you think are like easy tips from as far as you've gone into to be like, oh, if you just do this, I've found this works really well, or like is there anything like that kind of jumps out?
Oh, I mean, hopefully this is in the mark, but I think the main advice I get from like friends or my marketing team or like my partner is when you just like, I remember my friend said it to me the other day, is only film something once, right? Because as soon as you start to do things more and more, you start to like overthink it, and you start to do this and that, and you start to like not show up as yourself. So honestly, I think just like, I don't know, just trusting yourself, being like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And then, I kind of like that, of just exactly what he said, is just like, we're just going to take, you know, because he's been helping me film a lot of my Perform Athlete stuff, and I'll be like, oh, can we do it again? Like, I stuffed up my words there, or I started here, and he's like, no, like, it's fine. You're person, you're like, you know, you're Shani, that's what you did. And I think that's a kind of, it makes you like just chill out a bit, being like, oh yeah, you know, you don't have to try and act or like this facade, or you don't act as this person that you're making up to be in your head. And
what someone once said to me, perfect is the enemy of good. And I think it's such a good, like for me anyway, it's like, if you try for perfection all the time, it stops you from just doing that first little bit that might get you over the line of just like, just start, like, and just get going.
Oh my God,
you know?
absolutely.
Anyway, so segue before we went into touring life. So you've obviously toured with Gravity and Other Myths and Circa. You've gone pretty much around the world. They are pretty well known for being like always on tour. They will have 2 or 3 different companies that will be going around the world and doing all the rest of it. How did, like, people so often romanticize what touring life is? Can you give it a little, don't ruin the facade, but like what's that actually like?
I mean, it's incredible, right? Like, there's so many good things about it. You get to literally get paid to do what you love and go to like so many places around the world that usually the things I love is you go to places that you maybe wouldn't usually book, right? As you'd go to like these big like landmarks around the world, but sometimes the most beautiful cities is like, oh, I don't even know where I am right now. And you're walking down the street, you're like, oh man, it's beautiful here. But there are some really, really challenging things. The obvious of like packing your whole entire life in a suitcase. Yeah. That's one obviously hard thing. And personally, our company, we only get 23 kilos. So imagine packing for all seasons.
Yeah.
So your biggest winter jacket, like, and your boots, this, and then enough for summer, and then you know.
Literally, your whole life is in the back. You don't get to. Oh, Mum, could you do me a favour and send us a thing?
No, exactly. Like we left in, I think, March this year, and we won't be back in Australia until February next year.
Wow.
Yeah, which is crazy. You get so good at just wearing the same outfit. I think I've worn this outfit every single day this week. So there's that. And then there's, of course, like the packing up and zipping that bad boy up every single day. That's like one thing. I mean, the other thing I can talk from, like even just last week, I got food poisoning. So I was in hospital, and I feel like when you're sick overseas and you still have to show up for, do a show, you don't get sick days. You do, of course, if you're, and I was very lucky my team covered for me. But like, there's that side that touring every day of the year means like you're pretty much always on.
Yeah.
If you've got health conditions or, life things that come up, you're down in the dumps, you still have to like show up on stage and, that's another hard thing. Lack of routine.
Yeah.
And like, some people thrive off just like not knowing what's next, but not even like looking at their thing, and just, you can kind of just be a sheep and your tour manager.
Whatever,
just,
it's fine.
Exactly.
I need to turn up at this time to do this shoot. Fine. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But
I know. So that's, if you're someone that thrives on, scheduling and organization, that can be hard. You miss a lot of like life events. You miss I think I've only been home for Christmas like once in the last 5 years. You miss birthdays, you miss weddings. So not to put a dampener on it, because again, it is the best thing. It is the best thing in the world. But like there was obviously so many things that are challenging about it as well.
Yeah, I was talking about it with my family earlier, and we were talking about burnout. When I imagine, I don't know for sure, but I imagine burnout's quite high, and you kind of get to a point where it's like after 2-3 years, you're like, actually, this is quite disorientating.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is quite interesting, that like from a pure privilege point of view, because there's a lot of like, there are obviously massive negatives, but the massive positives is you get to perform every night.
Yes.
And actually, this is where it gets really interesting for me. So how do you actually keep sane? Because like to me, if I'm going from place to place, I mean, if I go from a city to city and I feel like I've forgotten something, I get discombobulated.
Oh,
I lose the giant set of keys over there. I lose my keys all the time.
Yeah.
So how is there anything that like you've found or techniques that you've used for living in different places, being able to go to different places?
I mean, my biggest thing is like just trying to mimic or try and create like a routine for myself is the thing that has honestly just kept me sane. And because I feel like it's too easy. A lot of the time we only do shows in the evening. Yeah. So that means you technically have the whole day up until like 4 p.m. onwards that you could just wake up in your hotel, do nothing, put on the TV again, go down to hotel breakfast, and you're kind of just like floating in the day until it's like, oh, okay, like I better go to show call now.
Yeah.
So it's, and everyone spends their first few maybe months to years doing that. Yeah. But for me, like, because I've been touring for about, I think, 6 or 7 years now. Yeah. Like setting a routine, like actually, it doesn't mean like necessarily setting an alarm. I set an alarm. I have a little, percolator with me on tour, so I make my own coffee.
What's coffee?
Yeah, a percolator, an electric percolator. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So like I make my own coffee. I like always make sure when I get into a town, like I do a little bit of a grocery shop. So I actually have like, my own like milk that I want in my coffee, and I can have, instead of like always eating hotel breakfast, maybe I want to have, add a bit of berries to it. Like start to do things that it's like, oh no, these are actually like the principles that I like to do, and like these are things that make me feel good. Yeah. And I'll always go to the gym, and that's like my time. That's what makes me feel good. It's what I would be doing if I wasn't performing every night. Exactly. I would be at home. I would go to the gym. I'd go for a walk. So yeah, I would say to people touring is like trying to make a routine. Yeah. And you can build on it. Of course, then I go on my computer and I work, and sometimes I'll do that in the hotel, but if we're in a nice place, like I'll try and actually go to a cafe. And
is there anyone else that, like, because obviously you have like gym and everything else, and perform athlete. We will get to perform athlete. is there anyone else that you look in and you're like, oh, they do this really cool thing or this really interesting thing or whatever, or like, you know, can you give any other example without outing anyone? I don't want to out anyone as like, you know, doing anything insane, but like, is there anyone where you look over or has like a kind of healthy on life balanced tour thing that you think you're going to incorporate?
I mean, there's a few people in our cast that study, which obviously takes up a lot of time, and it keeps their, you know, mind stimulated, which I think is so important because we're so physical. So I remember, one of my mentors told me, whatever you can do to stimulate your brain while you're doing such a physical job. On the other spectrum, we have some people in the cast that like sleep till 2 p.m. Oh, wow. And then they wake up, they maybe get one meal in, and then they do their show, and their whole, you know, their schedule, their day is like flips the other way around. So I think you've got every single type of breed you can imagine in this kind of industry.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But it must be so exciting and interesting, like stuck in, well, not stuck in, but like being part of this group and community and going around. It's just fantastic. I mean, to me, it sounds great. When we talk about side hustles and everything else, the thing that we were talking about, so in the pre-interview that we were talking about, we were talking about working out, but also as a perform athlete. And actually that came from a side hustle, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I created Perform Athlete in pretty much in the thick, or I should actually say at the start of COVID, because, you know, I was so used to just like putting everything into, you know, just acro training and touring life. And then when things started to dampen up, like when COVID just started to happen, this tour fell through and this one. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like I've only got maybe 1 month of work in the next 6 months. And, you know, it's kind of a bit disorientating and scary. We're just like, oh, you know, what do I do with all this time? It actually didn't come from a place of like, what can I do to get money at that stage? It just was like, what can I do to like occupy my brain? And, you know, I absolutely adored strength training and and then I created Perform Athlete and
What is it?
Let's
say no one's never heard of it. Sorry, I should have said, what is Perform Athlete?
Yeah, totally. So Perform Athlete is my strength and conditioning business, and it's dedicated, specifically to acrobats and circus artists. It was pretty much built because of what I was talking before about how there really felt like there was no like structure or system at all in circus for this side of it. And I think there's a number of reasons that, you know, it didn't exist. And I think because it's you know, this beautiful world that we live in, it doesn't have like a competition, or it doesn't have these like, you know, this set textbook to get like this skill or this skill. It's just, you know,
it being circus in this context.
It being circus, exactly. Okay. It's like you can pretty much do whatever you want on stage, right? It's like you get to make your own acts, or like you work with companies that just work with the personnel in their group. So it's not, you know, in gymnastics or in sports, it's like you are building up your tunnel vision. It's like, I need this skill for this routine, or, you know, I'm this athlete who needs to do this, you know, specific things. Yeah. So it's really like to get here, here's all these like systems in place. Yeah. And I feel like, in circus, people are willing to work hard, but it's not that it's new, but there isn't, strength training hasn't been introduced as much into it. Yeah. And I think people are genuinely want to get stronger and better, and they want to do everything they can to get good at, you know, what they do, but they need advice, they need structure, systems, something to be like, hey, do this, you'll get better at this.
Well, this is it. I mean, the thing to go back, to bring it back momentarily to tennis, for example, like you would sit there, like when you're doing, let's say, an hour's lesson. I can remember when we were doing, you know, training within teams, we would do drills for 40 minutes of 40 minutes of an hour lesson, and we'd just be like, drill, hit this ball, hit that ball, and it's boring and it's so dull. Or if you're in not that I'm saying working out's dull, but just like, and then
it's
in
non-glamorous
music
side.
you do scales, so you go up and down, you do whatever. So it surprises me that this didn't exist within circus already, or maybe it has, but no one's ever professionalized it before, or like what's the...
Well, so we have drills, so like, you know, each specific like discipline or skill set, you'll still have drills. So if you want to get like a back salt back on shoulders, like, you know, you've got your drills of just like tempos and throws and all of this, but I feel like we haven't tapped into the market of like how much we can improve ourselves as athletes or acrobats using strength training. Yeah. Because it is what I try and explain to people. It's like, oh, you know, but I get strong doing my skill. Yeah. And like, that's totally fair. And some people will completely get through this whole career never stepping foot in the gym or doing any strength training, and they'll be amazing. And you know, so it's not like it's mandatory. But I explain to people of like it's how you can get more reps in without, you know. And I'm going to relate it to acrobatics because that's what I do.
Yeah.
But you know, if I was pressing someone up to like extension all the way up here, and maybe I can only do like 2 or 3 reps in a session safely.
Yeah.
So before, like maybe I'm putting my flyer in risk because I'm, you know, getting fatigued. I can't quite lock out my arms.
Yeah.
So what? I only get to train 2 or 3 reps in a whole training session. That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
or at the end, I can go do my strength training or on another day, and I can, you know, do 3 sets of 10 reps, or I can do 3 sets of 12 reps.
Yeah.
And you know, I've just accumulated so many more reps on the exact same pathway.
Yeah.
I'm not putting anyone at risk. I can start to push my strength. I start to build confidence in, you know, this exact same pattern.
Yeah.
And, you know, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't
exactly.
you try and get more reps in and more experience in, more confidence in when you can?
Well, also as well, it means, I mean, to go back to the scales and shots and training, drills, everything else, it means that when you do that one, you know, you have that, you know, you can go for another 30, as opposed to only have ever gone up to 3.
Yes.
And suddenly you're like, oh, okay, cool, I just feel more confident.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect, you know, segue of like being able to, because, you know, just say you get a skill in the training room, that's not the same as when you do the skill in a show under fatigue, under lights, under nerves.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of the time, like training to not to failure or like to fatigue, but like a place in the gym where you can like really start to push your capacity.
Yeah.
So that when you're in a position where you're like, man, I do not feel good today, or like I didn't have as good of a sleep, I didn't get to eat as well today, like I'm feeling run down, but I know I've got these reps, or I know I've got this, you know, repertoire behind me that's going to support me through it.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, oh, I can get this skill when it's a good day, the sun's shining, and you know, I had my favorite breakfast.
Yeah. Well, this is quite an interesting one as well, because nutrition must be a massive part of it. I mean, especially if you're professionalizing and you're going around the world and you're doing whatever, and obviously you've got your berries and whatever. Is there anything, I don't, you know, body image, whatever, but like in terms of intake and stuff like that, is that stuff that you obsess over as well? Like, do you make sure that you're eating well, and I mean like actually regimented well, or do you leave things as a bit more open?
Yeah, I mean, I used to have quite a bad relationship with food.
Yeah.
More from like my gymnastics days and like leading into my like early circus days. I actually got diagnosed with anorexia nervosa and I got hospitalized for it. So since then, like, you know, I've been on the path of like such a better, you know, trying to build a better relationship with food and body image, and like I'm in such a good place now and I'm so happy I'm here. So like I definitely look at food now as like fuel and how it can like support me, you know, to show up on stage, to you know, perform well in the gym, everything like that. But then, as for eating, I would say you try and do the absolute best you can. And like, I know what makes me feel good. And, you know, but then like, I feel like touring can throw a whole spanner in the works of like, sometimes you finish a show at 9:30, you bump out at 10:30. The only thing open is the kebab shop or, you know, a pizza place, like honestly. And it's like, you can be prepared, but just say you've come from a day where you did your show, bumped out, travel the next day. It's, you know, all well and fine to say, oh, I always try and get to a supermarket, but like, that's not the reality.
No, exactly.
Sometimes. So I would say our cast is really good at like eating pretty well, but knowing that, a lot of the time we do have to eat out, and you just get good at finding the options that, you know, still work well. So for me, if I had to eat out, like I go for like the poke bowls, or I go for like Vietnamese, like a, you know, like a rice noodle bowl, a pho. Yeah, exactly. So, I think you get good at that. But, breakfast, I'll always eat like some sort of, I mean, protein. Everett will always like hear it, but like protein's the main macronutrient I'll always prioritize in my meals, because that's the hardest to get on tour, right? Like eating like carbs and fats are quite easy to get in meals. So it's like making sure like in every meal, if I at least get like a good protein source, 20 to 30 grams, then I can fill in the gaps of like whatever I need. And
exactly. And I think that's such an important message as well, where it's like, actually, it doesn't have to be like 100% regimented. It's not, it's not an idea of like, you have to be perfect. Like,
exactly.
It's not, it's like, just do okay. Which actually kind of brings it back, because one of the things that I find you're in the privileged position of being like on tour all the time, which means you're sort of always in that on mindset. Like you're always tuned to performance. Is there like do you have any help, or like to approach people who, because one of the things, I'm going to just talk for a second. One of the things that I actually find in this country is very tricky is that we haven't professionalized the artists yet, which means that you have these unbelievably skilled people, they then leave, go out into the world, and then they're quiet for, you know, 1 month, 2 months, whatever. and then they're just expected to go back on stage and just straight back in. So like, how do you help? What advice? How do you help people? What's the like aim? I suppose is there a piece for those kinds of artists that are coming in like within the app, within what you've created?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing when it comes back to like even touring, but you know, off tour as well, is like still trying to keep a routine, because it's so easy to, you know, be off contract or not even, you know, picked up for your first contract yet or your first company, and you know, you kind of get up, you'll go do like 1 hour of training, then you'll go home, and like that's when it's really hard, that when you are expected to be on, you've almost gone, you know, not out of shape, I don't like to use that word, but like, you know, you're not in your peak position, you're not in your peak performance to like be like, all right, hit the ground running 8 shows a week. So I mean, that's again like one of the main reasons I created Perform, is like, you know, it's a way to still train when you don't necessarily like have your apparatus if you're an aerialist, or for me, I don't have other humans around me. Like when I go back home, you know, to Sunshine Coast, I've got no one to train with there. So like my option is either I do nothing for, you know, 1 week to a month between shows, and then I come back and I have to do all my crazy heavy load after not doing anything.
Brutal training,
Exactly. Or I can go to the gym and I can try and, you know, at least maintain a baseline level of fitness and strength and conditioning. So when I go back, I feel prepared. It's just about like, you know, greasing the groove again and being like, all right, like, you know, get on my shoulders. And so it's like, you know, it doesn't feel like such a massive gap of just doing nothing to being like, oh man, I am back on, and like, you know, and that's how you get injuries, is like your body just like not doing anything and then expecting, you know, the highest demand of it straight away. Like, of course you're going to get injured.
And I think that's such an easy, I mean, any sport, whatever, it's like, obviously this is a lot physical, but actually if you haven't written for a while, then suddenly you go back to writing, you're like, what? Like, how am I, for example, offsetting your questions into ChatGPT and then reading the questions and going, hold on a second, that actually doesn't make any sense. You have to twig yourself back in. But actually, that was interesting, you talk about community, because actually, or not community, but you do have a community within the app, because actually being alone is quite hard. So how does that actually work? How is that, like, how have you found that people taking it on as you, and then also as well the community that you're building? Yeah,
I mean, I think one of the most, I'm just thinking about Darcy Grant. I just watched a video, who's our director in GOM. I literally just watched a video of him saying we're in a stage in life where we're actually like the most loneliest, right? And like we have the most connection to people because of like being online and doing this and that. And in, you know, some of the least lonely people in the world is like people in circus. And I think it's, you know, it's because we get to physically touch each other every day. We get to see each other every single day. People want to be a part of a community. And, you know, especially in a world that's going so online, I just feel like it's, even, I mean, there's benefits of that because, again, like, you know, there's a community there, but like people want or / need to feel involved in something. And that's one of the things I love most about performers. It's, you know, it's a form of accountability. You can be like, oh, you know, I did this workout today. Like, who else is joining me? And people be like, oh, you know, I was going to work out today, but like, yeah, let's go. And, you know, people feel a part of something to share wins and share like, you know, hey, I'm in this town. And I think it's so important. And I think that's something I feel so lucky about being in GOM and Gravity and Other Myths, is like, you've got your people, right? You've got your community, your second family. And like, this is what I'm trying to, you know, create myself with Perform Athlete. And I mean, one of the things that brings me the most happiness in the world is like seeing our little group chat go off like throughout the day. And, you know, it started off with like me, like, you know, really leading the questions, being like, oh, like, how's everyone feeling this week? Or like, people, our bodies sore. And now like, I won't look at my phone and I'll pick it back up, and like, they've messaged each other like 50 times in the space of an hour. And I'm like,
Mute.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's beautiful, right? It's like, there's a community that's like being built and only for the good. It's like like-minded people that want to push hard and that want to like feel the best in their bodies, and you know, they can meet up across the world. Sometimes I see them training in the gym and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so bad.
That must be so exciting. As like, I'm just looking at the time. It's fine. We've got a little bit of time. It must be so exciting when you had this, like, I call it a brain baby. Like when you have put an idea out into the world, and because I didn't realize it started in the pandemic. I thought it started relatively recently. So what was that feeling like when you saw people start to use it, and what was your like way of keeping that wave going? Because there's always an initial wave when it starts, but actually it gets harder when it's like into the slog, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Like, what's been like your experience for that?
I mean, at the start, I remember when I saw my like first member come through, I was like, oh my God. And like, you know, I was even like, if I only have like 10 members on, you know, I'll be so happy. And I remember it was just like this nice little side hustle that got me about like $100 to $200, you know, dollars a week. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. And like, you know, I could not believe it. Because, you know, there was so much imposter syndrome at the start. Like I was only 22, I think, when I created it. I had done, you know, a lot of years of strength training, but it was a really scary place to just like, fully just, you know, make something that I'm like, I'm so passionate about it. I feel like the world can benefit from this. Like, you know, I was pretty much just putting myself on the line, being like, oh, here you go. Like, and then, you know, I watched it grow and grow, and then it would, you know, it would stay steady for a while. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I've got 50 people on. Like, that's incredible. And then I temporarily, me and my ex-partner broke up. I temporarily shut it down. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can like run on my own. Like, I was really, really nervous. Yeah. And then I brought it back to life in 2024, I think. And then that's when it just blossomed, because it, you know, it was really just my program, my beliefs, like everything that I was like, this is exactly the vision I had for it. That's amazing. And yeah, since then I've just watched it scale now to over 300 people, which is crazy. It is so crazy. You know, it really was just my little passion project that I just was happy to run on the side. I was already training this way, so it was just even a way for me to document something and then, you know, follow it myself and just be like, oh, nice. Like, it's an easy way for me just to like view my own programming.
Well, this is it. I mean, I tried even just a little like introductory workout. I mean, admittedly, I'm so out of shape. It's hilarious. But I was like, I was like, okay, this is like nice, like 10 minute little like burner. Okay, great. Like I try and do it most mornings this week. I've tried. But like it's just great. It's the 50, 40, 30, 20.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
So I just think it's great. Like it's just a really nice little like waking up, try that one out, and
totally.
Then breakfast. It's great.
And you know, a lot of people like, especially in circus, because it is so like open ended. Like a lot of people just like getting told what to do, which is I think another thing that is amazing about the program is like maybe people do have an idea of strength training, or they are like, oh, I know if I do these things I'll get stronger. Yeah. Right, but like some of the great feedback I get from people that I couldn't even believe are on the app. I'm like, hey, you already know gym. Like, you know, I'm flattered that you're on my program, but like, you know, what brought you here? And they were like, man, sometimes it's just nice to take, you know, decision fatigue, like take the decision out of it and just like you tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh, that is so true of, you know, when you go to mentors and when you want to learn something, like a lot of the time you just want to be, you know, take the decision out of it and be like, cool, that's what I'm doing today. I don't get to complain. I don't get to, you know, because when you write your own programs, you'd be like, oh, I don't want to do that thing. Or you started like cherry pick things out. And
or the worst one that what you do sometimes is like when I was doing climbing, like you'd go, okay, cool, I'm going to go in and do this. And you'd start to do that thing. And then you'd get bored of it.
Yes.
Because you do the same thing again and again.
Exactly.
Again, because it's only you that's informing it. And you don't have that surprise when you walk in.
Exactly.
Which is like a great thing about a coach is being like, hey, have you tried, like, we're going to try this new fancy exercise today. And it's like, oh, great, like, that looks amazing.
Totally.
I think it's so important. And I think that's one of the great things, I don't know, one of the things I absolutely love about it. I think just to take it on quickly, just because this is technically a press and marketing one and I'm aware of time, from you use video a lot.
Yes.
And a lot of it has been through you developing it. But, like, what's your kind of, and obviously it looks amazing, like what's been your kind of ethos, or like how have you started building out video and camera and integrating that into what you do?
Yeah, I mean, at the start, like making Perform Athlete, it was completely run like all on my own. And I just remember, I feel like at the end of last year, with the company scaling so much, I just remember being like, oh, I was in a fork in the road of knowing I needed help because I was just drowning, like running a full-time business and then doing the marketing side of it and doing, you know, the point of contact for all my members, like, and then touring full-time as well. I just remembered being like, I'm about to drown. Like I cannot keep this up, and I cared so much. But then the other side of me, I was like, I was so scared to give over control to someone because I was like, this is my baby. And like, you know, I was really scared for someone to come on board and like maybe not do it exactly how I wanted it to. And like, that was such a weird place of being like, I need help, but I don't want help. But like, you know, and then this year, I got like a, you know, marketing team on, or like, you know, people from my cast, which I'm so lucky. I've got Chase, who like does all the videos for me now, and then Kev Beverly, edits them and is like our overlooker. And I just think it was some of the best decision I've ever made was like actually getting the team behind you.
Yeah.
And like I'm so proud I did the first 4 or 5 years on my own. And again, like they're just doing the marketing. Like I do all of the programming, all of the messaging the clients and everything. But I think it's just like, it is important to pass the baton on in some places to...
Yeah.
Because as like you're talking before, like you do get burnout, or like the potentially like the quality of the products will start to lessen because you're having to spread yourself so thin. And I just felt like when I was able to delegate some tasks over to other people, oh man, I just fell back in love with programming so much more because I was like, okay, this is what I love. This is what I'm good at. This is like my area. And like people can, on the outside can put, I'll get the videos where they can edit it and they can, and I think that was so necessary.
I think that's such an important lesson there as well, because it's like one of the things that I learned from this year, for me personally, is like, I was like, oh, actually, I don't have to be everything.
Exactly.
And I was like, I took a massive, this is the first year where I was like, oh yeah, hold on, I'm not great at everything. And
totally.
Just stop and actually just be like, this is what I'm good at, like I'm good here.
Exactly.
And I think that's such an important lesson in life. It's like knowing, being like, it's cool, you've taken it this far, that's amazing, now hand it over to someone else and like let that person that's really great go, let them fly. So I think that's great. Do you ever use that has growing this informed your creative practice and your kind of gone practice?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the area that it's like most benefited is like just my confidence of, I think confidence comes from proving to yourself you can do hard things. And like, this is never something I could ever imagine, I would be able to do. So I think it has like rubbed off on me as a performer as well, or just like taking, more risks on stage. Like, in the show that we do, 10,000 Hours, I have a solo that's like...
Great show.
Oh, thank you. It's my favorite. I have like the big improvised bit. And I remember when I first started, I was so nervous. And then, when I get to it each night, I'm just like...
Oh, is that the dancing bit?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, is that...
That's completely improvised every night.
Oh, how funny is that? Okay, sorry, carry on.
So I think like proving to myself I can do hard things, or like, it does rub off on you as an artist and more confidence and like, taking more risks. And some nights it'll, be incredible and other nights it might be a flop. And I think it's all, part of the process. And
it's okay if it messes up. It's okay.
Yeah, totally.
As long as you don't break your back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think kind of like, sorry, thank you so much for this. I think as a circus artist, okay, after that little overheating break there for you, except for you won't notice. I think we're coming on to like one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is like as a student in particular is like bridging that gap from you leave training and then you walk into like a professional company for the first time.
Yeah.
Like obviously you've done it on both sides. Like I think from you having worked with, especially with a company that has people coming in all the time, and maybe not all the time, but like coming in and coming out, what's like the best way to make a good first impression, do you think?
Oh, I would say...
It doesn't have to be the best way, but like what are the points or like things that you've noticed that people who integrate well, what do they do?
I would say, especially more these days, like being like broad or being like well-rounded in a bunch of everything, because people especially come out of these incredible circus schools like the National Circus Centre, and like they're incredible at their discipline. Like they are some of the best at their aerial or at hand balancing, at their exact little niche discipline. But I think being in companies, even if you're in a cabaret, you're kind of expected to maybe have like 2 or 3 acts, but also show up in that little acro act. And I'm from an ensemble or an acrobatic ensemble, so at these auditions, the thing that I think is the most valuable is being able to do a little bit of everything. If they want to test you on your tumbling, knowing that you have a good tumbling pass behind you, or in some creative tumbling, knowing that you have the basics in handstands, knowing that you can, do a little bit of base middling and flying is going to go a long way. Because, you need to think about if you were in these companies, if someone went down and you were like, hey, I've got all these things that I can offer, man, you look pretty shiny compared to these other people that are really good at their silks, but you're good at your discipline, but can also do all these things. You can cover, because what we were saying before, you're on the road 11, 12 months of the year. Someone's going to get sick or injured. So if you can carry the slack, when someone's down, I think that's really, really valuable. And then, in terms of auditions, getting a little bit of insight of my experience in it, GOM come from more of a place of being more physical auditions. So they want to see what your toss looks like, how you are in towers and bunking. They'll test you a little bit more physically, they might give you, I think the most recent one they gave like a physical task is like make an acrobatic handshake. So, you know, theirs is a little bit more like, you know, playful in that of you might shake hands and then pop up to into a hand-to-hand. And then my experience with Circus is a bit more like be ready to do a lot more like improvisation. And if you haven't done anything like that before, it can feel like quite daunting, quite intimidating if you're like thrown into a room and you get given this task. So to prepare students for, and I'm sure, you know, that's just my experience out of 2 companies, but to prepare students coming out of school, like if you can do any sort of like improvisation as well, whether that's physical, like send yourself physical tasks of, you know, I'm going to set myself a 5-minute task. I need to make a piece where I'm not allowed to use my hands, or, you know, more of like circus language of like, I'm going to come up with like more of like a theatrical like aspect, and what if it's like if I do this, or I think that's so important. Again, you want to go into an audition feeling like as prepared as possible, as confident. So I think there are ways to like stand out, and then also just like not being scared to do something. I know how scary it is going in there, like you, especially if you're doing like in a bit more of like a group one, it's easy to kind of maybe like hide towards the back on things that you're a little bit more, you know, scared about. But I think, man, even if you muck up, or even if you do something that you're like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, I always feel like it's worth like shooting your shot and like, you know, aiming high. Maybe it didn't land, but it's better if you do that than like if you were just like, you know, hid to the back, and because that's not what you want. Again, there's been several times in a circus show that someone's injured mid-show and they're like, oh, you're on. Yeah. And you're like, okay. And like, you know, you need to pull something out of your butt. So it's like, you know, sometimes you just need to get good at like thinking on the fly and putting yourselves in positions that you're not going to feel comfortable doing it. But I think it's just so important to put yourself out there, and
Oh, I think that's fascinating. I love that your advice is basically walk up to the biggest person and punch him in the face. For this version, you know. I think one of the things that you talk about you talked about quite a lot in our like little pre-interview things about trusting your instincts. And actually like obviously you did it so young, and like you've done it with this, but like what does that actually like, does that look like anything for you in terms of like trusting your instincts, like within the doubt? Is there like a moment or like a way that like physically getting over that? Because doubt is obviously, it's so human, like that's such a natural thing. Is there like any advice to like get over? I
mean, just trusting your gut, and just, I kind of said it before, but I honestly do think confidence comes from like doing things and like proving to yourself you can do it. And I don't know, I just feel like, you're never going to feel ready. Honestly, like I feel like you're never going to feel comfortable for that audition, or like feel confident here, or you're not going to feel, you know, hyped up to go talk to that like director that you've been meaning to. But like a lot of the time you're like, man, just do it. And before you know it, like each time you do it, it becomes a little bit less daunting, because you're like, I've been here, I've been in uncomfortable situations, or I've been in positions where, you know, maybe put my belly in my throat, like, you know, I wanted to vomit. And like the more of those you do, I think you honestly just get better and better at it. But and then trusting your gut of just, you know, in a world, not that it's saturated at all, but like in a world that's so online, I think like sticking to your own style, or like sticking to your own, not trying to look like, you know, this person, you know, you can have inspiration and look up to people and, oh man, I love how like they move, I want to adopt that a little bit more. But you're not trying to copy people, being like, you know, this is what's unique about me, and like this is one thing that I have that other people don't have, and like, you know, just trusting your gun, trusting yourself, knowing like, this is what kind of makes me uniquely me, and like leaning into it rather than trying to mold into a world of being like, oh, everyone else like moves like this or flows like this, and like everyone does this sick skill on trapeze, I'm going to copy it. And it's like, what can I do? Like what's so different about what I do compared to like, you know, the other artists in this industry?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that is such good, and like also as well, especially with circus, because it's such a weird industry. There's nothing else in the world where you can put juggling and acro in the same like lump as like, okay, cool, this is the same art form, really. Totally. So it's like, it really is an example of just like trust yourself. I think just to kind of close it up, like what's most exciting for you, but like what are you looking forward to like over the next like year or two? What does the next 2 years look like for you?
The next 2 years will look like still touring full time with GOM, still building Perform Athlete. Like I have big goals of it, you know, one day kind of becoming a curriculum in these circus schools. Like that's like where my mind's at, as well as like trying to actually physically like close this gap and like reach out to all these schools and get like, you know, here's a plan for like teachers to just make it, you know, mandatory. And then like, yeah, down the track for like, you know, performing in that, we have more shows coming up. I would eventually love to like step into like more of like a director role, but I'm only 26. So like with strength training as well, like hopefully my body will keep performing for another 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what the next 2 years looks like for me.
That's exciting.
Still hustling,
Still hustling.
still training, still performing.
Well, listen, I always close with, do you wish I'd asked you any question? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything that you wish I'd asked, anything that I've missed? Like,
Oh, I think you covered it just like, yeah, to a go of advice I'd give for like, for someone starting something, whether it's a business, whether it's, you know, opportunities or auditions. And it's like, honestly, just start, because you won't feel comfortable to do so. And I feel like you learn a lot as you go.
Yeah.
And like, that's like my biggest thing. It's like, especially going from like a flyer to a middle to a base, it's like I just started, you know, I could thank strength training for like giving me the confidence to do so, but like I just started a business and I just started, you know, applying for all these companies, and I just started doing all these things, even when I didn't feel ready, and even when I didn't feel confident, and I was like, oh man, like they're not going to pick me, or like, you know, this business is going to crash, or like, well, you know, when I'm at a business, I didn't know how to run the finance side. I didn't know how to like put taxes aside for it or do this. It's like, you just learn though. You just learn as you go. And like, I feel like real life experience is better than just like waiting until you're like, oh, I'll apply to that company when I get this skill, or like, I'll do this, you know. It's almost like pushing the, you know, like the landmark, or pushing it further and further and it's like, well, you've just wasted 2 years now. When that could have been 2 years on the job doing the thing, or at least like getting yourself closer to doing it. So yeah, I think that's my advice.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming.
You.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day, and I'm sure everyone that's listening to this or watching for this really, really, really appreciates it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.